What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It is the King and I Life podcast, hosted by myself, Soul Toucha the Poet, and my brother, son, Soul X, in his joint. Check it out. Hit us up, www.kingandilife.com, for all our podcast info. Subscribe to whatever podcast platform that you choose. Also, hit us up, KINGANDEYE369@gmail.com. Email us your suggestions, your feedback, and all that good stuff. Tune in to us live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, Wednesdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And make sure you like, subscribe, and share, because we are all over all those social media platforms. Stay tuned for the good stuff. Yeah, we out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the King and I Life podcast. It's your boy, Soul Toucha the Poet, and I got my YouTube cousin, the beautiful Book of Jennesis. What's up?
Hey, what's good?
Yes, finally a sit-down interview that I've been waiting to do for quite some time. Look, we just gonna jump into it. So, for the people out there, give the people a little background about yourself.
Like what? Where do you want me to start? It's so much. Y'all, my voice is a little scratchy still. I've been under the weather. But I'm going to do the best I can. I don't normally sound like I've been smoking Marlboros, but, you know, y'all get it. Anyway, what background you want?
Don't pay her no mind. She talk about she sound like she under the weather, but looking like she above the weather. So don't pay her no mind. So, I mean, you know, tell the people where you from, you know, some of your hobbies, you know what you do for, you know, that basic stuff, you know, the initial date information.
Okay, I am from Chicago. I'm not really from Chicago, but y'all know if we live outside of Chicago, we claim Chicago. So I'm from Chicago. Let's see. Well, actually, I lived in the city of Chicago until I was 15. Mm-hmm. My parents decided they wanted to give me a future. You know, I don't know who told them to do that. So they moved us to the burbs, you know, and turned my life upside down. I had to leave all my friends, everything I knew. But it was the best thing for me because, you know, I was typical teenager I was probably doing atypical teenage stuff. I was just wilding out. And they was like, nah, we're not going for none of that. So, yeah, that was it. They moved me to the suburbs. I stopped being a knucklehead because I was in a different environment and buckled down, graduated high school early after failing. Before, I failed everything, including gym, y'all. How you fail gym?
How do you fail everything and gym? Like, help me understand that right now.
Because my mother would literally drop me off at the front door and I would go out the side door. After she drove off.
Oh, man, terrible. Yeah. Terrible.
So I had to like double time it. I was in summer school every year. Double timed it. I graduated high school early. Graduated high school in December. Got married right after in February at age 17. Got married in February. I went off to college in April. Didn't come back for my high school graduation or anything. I was just doing my thing. Got married young. We planned to wait 5 years before we had any kids. 1 year anniversary. Found out we had a little bundle of joy bacon. You know, did the typical thing. Struggling college student. Had my kid. Went right back to school. Then life started happening. You know, two young people that shouldn't have been married.
I can relate to that.
Things were going south for us, or so I thought. That wasn't, it started, that was like the uphill. So I left school, I left college because, you know, the personal life was interfering with my studies. I couldn't focus. Came back home to my parents so that they could save me and the baby and him. came back home,
Oh, man.
and then we jumped out of the frying pan into the fire. Once I came back home, then all hell really broke loose.
Things got really real.
And we stuck it out for 16 years until it came to a head, and we had to check out, because if not, then somebody might have been checked out. So,
oh man,
yeah, it was rough. What happened after that? After that, I was single for about 5 seconds, and then
she said
ended
5
up
seconds.
about 5 seconds. Signed the divorce papers, and before you knew it, I was in another relationship.
Damn, ink wasn't even dry.
Stayed there for a little over a year. Found myself single, and I was single and mingling and enjoying my first time as an adult being single. Mid-30s, in my mid-30s. And then that didn't last for long. I got divorced in 2007. Oh, wait, I guess I got to go back. I got divorced in 2007. Lord. He died in 2008. I was in a relationship, from 2008 until end of 2008 until the middle of 2010. Ended that relationship. I was single for a couple months, maybe about 5 minutes that time.
5 minutes.
Got in another relationship, ended up married again in 2010. Marriage from hell. About 5 minutes after it started, I was ready for it to end.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I mean, just it was a different time in my life. Like, right. I went into the marriage for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I did that the first time and the second time.
Well, the first time I was actually in love, young love. Well, what we think is love, we don't really know any better.
That don't even count at 17.
Young age,
come on,
right?
Now.
That doesn't count. But as in after all of that, 16 long years, and I can't say that it was more good years than bad years. I took responsibility for the part that I played in it, because
right.
I was young, I was stupid, I was doing all the stupid stuff that young women do. And the next time, like after that divorce, well, you don't know because you're a guy, but as women, we go through something. When we get divorced, we try and reinvent ourselves. We come up with a whole new life. We cut our hair off. We want to lose weight if we can put on some extra pounds. So, I did all of that. I did all of that stuff. And I had been Catholic all my life. And I started going to this church. There was a group of, my female friends, some cousins. We had all gotten together, just kind of bored, well, we were living double lives. We were out in the streets, in the bars, lounges, everywhere, turning up. And we were like, well, we can't do this for the rest of our lives. We got to turn our lives around. So somebody had the bright idea, okay, well, let's go to church one Sunday. Nobody knew where to go. My cousin was listening to a pastor on the radio, and she was like, he's so funny on the radio. Let's go over to his church and see if he's as funny in real life.
Okay.
So we were like, okay. So it was like, I don't know, 10 or 12 of us that we go on this Sunday, and we ended up like in the overflow, and he's preaching. Of course, I get convicted from the overflow room. So I'm like, oh man, feeling like God done came down and talked to me directly, through this man. So we started going to church, like on Sundays, and once I started learning, I had been in Catholic school all my life, but I really hadn't learned anything about the Bible. So I had this newfound knowledge, and I was like on fire. And I would go to church on Sunday, I would take notes, and then I come home and I'm like reading these scriptures and dissecting. So I'm like, I'm recreating. I'm a whole new me,
Getting it in.
Right. And amen. Hallelujah. But I was still tearing up the bars on Saturday night. I was like, I'm going to get there eventually. At least I'm in the building. Some days I was, man, listen, some days I was in the building in, what they call those short Daisy Dukes. I had Daisy Dukes on, and the pastor tell you, wait. Stand up and tell your neighbor such and such. And I would be sitting there ashamed. I didn't want to stand up because I didn't want the pastor to see I had these little shorts on. But, that's how I was living in the world. So I was like, I'm just going to run on church. I ain't know nothing about, appropriate church attire. So
you went to church in Daisy Dukes?
I went to Bible study in Daisy Dukes. I sure did.
How many looks did you get?
You know what? I don't know. I was so naive, and didn't know, like, because it was a more relaxed environment, like people had on sweats and, t-shirts. It wasn't like one of those stuffier, or what I called, the stuffier old churches where everybody had on these long dresses and stuff like. So I thought the regular stuff we wore, was appropriate. And I saw other people in regular clothes, so this was my regular clothes. So I showed up as I was, and
they say come as you are.
I came as I was, and eventually I got my life together and I put some clothes on. But, yeah.
So let me ask you this question, because this is something that I've gotten flack about in my life. Multiple marriages. How do you personally feel about them, and how much criticism, I'll say, have you gotten for being married more than once and still possibly would like to be married?
I actually haven't gotten much flack. I think I'm harder on myself than people are, because I didn't come from a family of people that got divorced. In my family, people got married young. They stayed married, till death did them part, or till, they were old. And divorce wasn't something, that I was familiar with. I actually was the first person, like, of the younger generation to get a divorce. And it was embarrassing for my mother. By then, my father had passed on, and my mother was embarrassed because I had gotten divorced. And, she didn't want people to know. She's like, don't tell anybody. And, that's kind of how it was. I've kind of always been, I don't want to say rebellious, but for lack of a better term, rebellious. And it was kind of like, I watched people in marriages who weren't happy, and they stayed through, all kinds of cheating and all that. And you could visibly see that they were unhappy. And I just wasn't willing to do that. So, when my situation I felt was at its end, I was like, what's the point in me spending the rest of my life unhappy, just to save face for other people who don't have to deal with what I'm dealing with daily. So, I chose to get a divorce. And then, doing it again, I was apprehensive, but, I never got around to the reason why I did it the second time. Like, after I had got in the church, I was thinking that, I'm going to throw out my wants or desires, so to speak, to some degree. And I'm going to try and do what I think God would approve of. So I chose this person, for what he looked like on paper. He had come from a 2-parent household. The parents were the head of the marriage ministry in the church, and they were ministers, and he had been raised in church all his life, and he turned out to be the damn devil. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. So, because I'm still rebellious, like, no, I ain't gonna be able to do this one either, player. So, got to put my running shoes on. I'm out of here. So, yeah, I got divorced again. And then it was kind of like, okay, now, girl, you divorced, you got these kids, I didn't have any kids out of wedlock, but then I was kind of feeling a type of way myself because I held higher standards for myself, and I didn't figure my life would have gone that route. Like, I figured, if I had gotten married, because, for a period of time, I didn't want to get married. I thought I would be like a childless bachelorette traveling the world. We have all
yeah.
But then after I got married, I figured that I would be just like everybody else, get married young, stay together, and, raise our kids, see our grandchildren. And when it didn't happen, and then, here I am failing at it a second time, it was like, I don't know. I don't. Now I'm still a supporter of marriage. I love the idea of love. I love the idea of marriage, and what I believe that entails, even though it hasn't worked out for me. And there is a fear, to some degree, about, doing it again, because who wants to be the serial bride? But then on the flip side, I look at it like, if we have a job, how do we stay on the first job that we ever had? When that one doesn't work out, we apply for a new one, and that's kind of, I don't want to say that's the approach that I have to marriage. It's just kind of like, okay, you learn from the mistakes that you made, and then you try better the next time. So should there be another time, then I think my vetting process would be different. And, I would look at, well, I guess I can say that the lessons I learned, I learned a lot from those hard lessons, or the divorce taught me some things to avoid in the future.
Yeah, I can dig it because, after my first marriage, I got married, I was 20? Had no business getting married. Got married because she was pregnant, and that was like, we was married for like 5 seconds before I was like, the hell with this. And it lasted 6 years. And after that, I was like, I ain't doing this ever again. Then I turned over that rocket line. I can't say never did it a second time. Got married because she wanted to be married. And we was cool. That lasted, that was another 6 years. Then I said, I will never do this shit again. Did it a third time, and that was the marriage from hell.
Wow.
So my question to you is, because, you kind of hear it from other people sometimes, but then you beat yourself up the most. What did you beat, as far as looking at it as a failure, what were you telling yourself, and how did you get yourself out of saying I'm a failure?
The first time, I'm not going to say devastated. I just had high hopes for us because, it was young love, and, we had done like the struggle thing where, we were both young, so we didn't have, a nickel to see Jesus. And then, to go from not having any money to then getting some stability. And, by the point of the divorce, I had, in my career at that time, I had reached the height of my career. It was like, okay, I went from struggling to now I've made it, career-wise. Yeah. But when my career was at its height at that time, my personal life was like in the toilet, and I was depressed, and, so I was like really down on myself. I knew that at the time that I was I was cut out for marriage. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you know, as a kid growing up, that's kind of what the lessons that they were teaching us about
Mm-hmm.
life. You know, we didn't get so much um, lessons about money and, you know,
Right.
things like
Yeah.
that from the mom. Anyway, I did from my dad.
Mm-hmm.
But from my mother, it was all about teaching me how to be a wife.
Right.
So then when you get to be a wife and it's kind of not going as planned, it's like, well, wait, hold on. What did I miss?
Mm-hmm.
And I am a type A personality.
Mm.
So,
Wow.
you know, I want everything to be perfect. And
Right.
when it wasn't working out perfectly, it was like, you know, kind of this mental torment that I was doing with
Mm-hmm.
myself, you know, trying to figure out what was it that I did wrong, you know, and I'm an overthinker. So I would be like replaying scenarios. Okay,
Mm.
what did I do? What did he say? What should I have said? And it just wasn't working out in my favor. And I got into like this really low place
Mm-hmm.
after that marriage where, you know, I was depressed and, you know, at the same time, I'm finding, you know, relationship with God. I'm gonna say relationship,
Mm-hmm.
not religion. I'm developing this relationship with God. And to be honest, that's the only thing that pulled me through
Right. Okay.
because it was kind of days where it was like, okay, I don't even want to get up and go to work because, you know, what am I doing it for?
Right.
This marriage
Okay.
didn't work. It was kind of like this marriage failed, you know, everything else. I lost hope for everything else. And then just when, you know, I was kind of thinking that, okay, the first time I did it for me, this next time, let me take me out of the picture and
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do it for God. So it's kind of like, well, he's got this stuff on paper, but physically, I'm not attracted to him.
Mm.
And then I was listening to, you know, church people and these different things and, you know, people getting inside your head. And somebody, I can't remember who, somebody had said, God isn't concerned about your happiness. He's concerned about your obedience.
Mm.
So, yeah. So I'm thinking, well, I don't have to be attracted to him. I just have to be obedient to God if this is who is supposed to be my husband. And when I tell you that thing was, woo, child, I don't even know. It was like I did it and, you know, there was this fight because part of me was like, you know, you shouldn't be doing this because you know that you don't feel it. Your heart isn't in that. Like
Right.
literally the night before we got married, we were arguing. And because I didn't want to go, I was ready to back out. And we literally stayed up all night long arguing on the phone. And we didn't have like a big wedding. We just went to the courthouse and I didn't want to go. And we argued literally up until it was time. Like we just barely had enough time to make it to the courthouse.
Are you serious?
In order to, yeah. And it was kind of like, you know, I know now hindsight is always 20/20, but my gut was telling me like, girl, don't do it, run. And I you know, just kind of like you have that devil on one shoulder and the angel
Right.
on the other shoulder. It's like my gut was saying, don't do it, run. And then I can't say this angel, but I had this other voice saying, well, God's not worried about your happiness. He's worried about your obedience.
Eesh.
Yeah. So
Eesh.
I went and it wasn't 30 days later that I wanted out.
Eesh. That sounds like my third marriage. Look.
Yeah.
I don't think I could roll with the God don't want your happiness, he wants your obedience when it comes to marriage. I think that is, to me personally, I think that is a grave mistake. I would venture to say an emotionally deadly mistake.
Right.
I just couldn't do it. I couldn't roll with that philosophy. I just couldn't.
I know that now.
Right.
But then, you know, I'm a babe in Christ. I don't know nothing. So okay, and all word, isn't foundational word, and my discernment was off. I'm getting messages all over the place, and at that point, I didn't know who to listen to, who not to listen to. So, I did it, and I paid the price. I suffered the consequences, but I won't do it again.
I tell you, what you just said sounds like all these conversations in these YouTube streets.
Yeah.
everybody got a hint or a lesson in marriage and this, that, and the other. And you hear it all over the place. You sitting there like, well, which one should I listen to? But at this age, you sitting there like, shut the hell up.
Exactly. I mean, and now, I know that, then, I'm just learning, this God thing, the way that, I'm learning it at that point. And now, years later, it's like, okay, well, they can't tell me that now. So when I'm hearing these YouTube conversations, it's kind of like, well, that may work for you. And if it does, then okay, that's fine. Okay, do your thing.
Right.
But for me, as far as my direction goes, now I know how to tap in and listen, to God, who is, who I believe in, and get a word for myself. You can talk to me all day long, but if God hasn't confirmed what you're saying to me, then it's in one ear and out the other. Yeah, I mean, people will send you off because, I'm like, they done sent me off. Now here I am, 2 kids later, with this crazy fool who still won't leave me alone. Literally to this day, I'm still dealing with the after effects of that. But it is what it is. So
ain't nobody tell you to be all cute.
Listen,
I saw your throwback picture, so I already look. Ain't nobody tell you to be all cute.
Listen, I can hold my own, on a good day. I know how to, put a little shink that ain't together.
I know that's right.
Listen, I ain't nothing I'm doing that cold for somebody still to be harassing me years after the fact. Like, buddy, go find you somebody that's for you, because it's not me.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So let me switch gears on you real quick.
Yes.
So tell me what you're passionate about.
What am I passionate about? I am passionate about children, issues affecting children. I'm passionate about community issues, things that Black and brown folk struggle with. Racism is something that I feel very strongly about or passionate about, or I guess equal rights. Some days equal rights about for women. For women, I'm not gonna say I'm a feminist. I'm not a feminist. But there are certain women's issues that I take a stand on. I believe that, healthcare, women's health, reproductive, and otherwise, is between her and her doctor, not necessarily the government. So things like that, I'll stand up for women with regard to. What else am I passionate about? Being respectful, everybody deserves respect. Doesn't matter, what their title, what their socioeconomic status is.
All right.
You give the president the same respect as you give the janitor of a company.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, so that's my short list.
Okay, so I want to pick a few things out of your short list. You talk about community is one of your passion things.
Yes.
I struggle with that, being passionate about the community, because every time I look around, Black and brown people in our community seem to do a lot of dumb stuff, and they blame it on a lot of dumb things. Do you ever get frustrated looking at your community, especially where you are? Do you ever get frustrated because growing up, well, not growing up, but as an adult, I always hear, oh, they ain't doing nothing for us this, they ain't doing nothing for us that. And it's like, it's your community. Why aren't you doing